Hello, everybody. I'm Myron Medcalf, ESPN College Basketball reporter, radio host. He's Jeff Borzello, covers college basketball and recruiting for ESPN and ESPN.com. Jeff, every year we're surprised by something. You never know what college basketball is going to give you, but there's always some major development. This is one of the biggest in-season storylines I think we've covered. Chris Beard terminated by the University of Texas on Thursday. He'd been arrested on a felony domestic violence allegation charge about a month ago involving his fiance. His fiance later recanted and refuted the initial police report, said Chris Beard might have acted in self-defense, but Texas in its decision on Thursday said, we don't care about the criminal proceedings. We made this decision on our own based on what we believe was behavior by Chris Beard that makes him, quote, unfit to be the head coach at the University of Texas, man. I flew down to Austin the day he was suspended, was there for their first game against Rice. Rodney Terry's the head coach. I still didn't know what was going to happen down there, Jeff. And then today, even though we've had this buildup and we understood it was a possibility, maybe it's silly, but I was still kind of shocked in a way. It's still sort of like, man, it actually happened. What was your reaction when you heard the news?
Well, it was one of surprise. I mean, like you said, I mean, the timing just kind of seemed a little bit random. I mean, since it happened, obviously he was placed on indefinite suspension without pay the day that it happened. And then since then, nothing's really happened from a legal perspective. The only thing that's happened is his fiance, kind of not changing her story, but saying that he didn't strangle her and he was acting in self-defense. And since then, it's really been nothing. And I think when they placed him on suspension, I think most people thought that was a way to kind of buy time, let the process play out, do their own investigation. And like you said, when they announced it today, and then in some of the documents that we've obtained, they basically said, hey, we weren't waiting for a guilty verdict or anything like that. It was the behavior itself. That's not what we want representing our university. And that was that. But the fact that, over the past couple of weeks, there's kind of been different whispers. Okay, he's going to come back. They're going to wait till next year. Then he's going to come back. And then, some buzz last night and this morning about how they might let him go in 24 hours, this whole thing. So there's just been kind of a lot of mixed messages, mixed whispers going around out there. And then today, just suddenly he's out and they released a statement, and that was that. So the suddenness of it, the timing of it kind of came out of nowhere. But when you kind of read the letters, the emails and letters they sent to him and his attorney, you can see where they came from in terms of why they did it now. It was just, hey, we weren't waiting for the legal process to play out. This is our decision, and we're moving on. And Rodney Terry's going to be our coach for the next 2 months at the very least.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, man. This is a guy who worked his whole life to get the Texas job. That's his dream job. Goes from the JUCO ranks. I met him at Arkansas Little Rock when they upset Purdue. I believe that was 2016.
Yep.
Goes to Texas Tech for 5 years, gets hired by Texas. By all accounts, if you made a list of who's going to be next at the big schools, right? The Dukes, Kentucky's, Kansas, who's the first person they call if they go outside the family, so to speak? Chris Beard was at the top of every list. He was the guy that everyone sort of saw as like, you're going to call that guy and at least inquire. And just like that, it's gone. $30 million on his contract. Domestic violence is terrible. And if the allegations against him are true, it all makes sense. And
we should mention they're firing him for cause.
Yes.
There was a stipulation in his contract that said, if he does something that does not put the university or the administration in a good light, then that includes being charged with a felony. They could fire him for cause. And so they're going to, I'm sure, there's going to be some sort of fight to get some of that money back, but they're saying, nope, we're done paying you as of, and I think one of the letters that they sent to him said as of January 5th. And that was that.
And that was the whole tone of the exchanges between the university and Chris Beard. I think that was probably the shocking part is I was under the impression that the legal process was going to play out and then you might get a decision. And, you and I were talking. I got a call last night from the Travis County District Attorney's Office. They've been quiet for a month, and they said, hey, here's a statement, we're going to put out, we're still evaluating things in light of some of the recent statements. And the tone was sort of like, this case may not move forward, like this situation may not proceed the way people might think. It was almost like they were preparing people for potentially a change. So I think people who read that might have been bracing for, oh, wow, they might reduce these charges, drop these charges. And obviously a lot of people were upset about that potential when they saw the statement. But if that happens, well, then Texas might try to get Chris Beard back in that spot. And then all of a sudden it was like Texas goes no way. And you see the exchanges between Chris Beard, his attorney, and the school. And it was no way from the beginning. I mean, this was a school that had decided it didn't want to deal with whatever comes with Chris Beard and the fallout of this situation. It wasn't about sitting down with Chris Beard and him trying to prove that he's better than what happened that night. It wasn't about his fiance's statement saying he might have acted in self-defense. It wasn't about his lawyer or anything else. It wasn't even about what the players or the program or the recruits think, because I think that's what a lot of people assumed in this moment. Like, this is a big-time coach who's really changed the program, and you expect him to change the program in the future. Texas said, we don't care about any of that. We want no part of what might be attached to Chris Beard, and that was going to be the situation the whole time. So all the buzz about holding on to Chris Beard, the power brokers at Texas were never thinking that way, and I think that's what came to light today.
Well, I think part of it is, what else, what else could come out if they had, let's say hypothetically, they reinstate him next week and then something else comes out. I mean, we've all seen the police report. I mean, it's pretty horrifying. I mean, like, if something else comes out, if, a 911 call comes out or additional documentation from that night come out, there's just, it's really hard for Texas, if they had reinstated him, to kind of walk that back. Once you reinstate him, you're going to fire him again. So I think they probably took kind of the safe route here and said, let's just kind of wash our hands of this. And if we have to deal with, contract issues in the future, we'll do that, but we're moving on.
It's not March 30th, Jeff, or even March 15th. It's not April. I mean, these things happen. Coaches get terminated, but I can't think of a situation where a Texas team that has been top 10 all year came into the season. A lot of people thought they had Final Four potential, for a guy to get fired in early January with the second half of the season to go, in a transfer portal era, in an era with NIL that's shaped recruiting, where the coach influences so many things within the program, and now he's gone. I wonder how real that is for this team now, because Rodney Terry, who's been a head coach at UTEP, Fresno State, was the associate coach for Chris Beard. He goes, wins his first 5 games. They lose in the last game they played, but there was a sense that these guys were playing for him. But were they playing for him with the idea that he was going to be the coach all year, or were they sort of playing for him like eventually Chris Beard comes back? I don't know. But I feel like today was very real for this team. The team hasn't been made available. Texas has not allowed these guys to talk since this all went down, but that's going to happen in the days ahead. Like, Jeff, what happens to this team this year? I know the future is a conversation we got to get into, but like, for the team we see with Marcus Carr and these guys who look like they could compete in the Big 12 and beyond, what does this mean for that group in that locker room now?
With Chris Beard as coach, I mean, they're a potential Final Four team. Beard's a coach that's proven he can get that far. He's gone to the Elite Eight. He's gone to the title game. Rodney Terry hasn't proven he can get that far in the tournament. That said, I mean, this team still has talent. It still has pieces. I think their ceiling might drop a little bit. I know that's not the first storyline that everyone wants to talk about right now, but from a on-court perspective, I just think their ceiling falls a little bit, just because Chris Beard, as we've talked about, I think he's kind of proven himself as one of the premier coaches in the sport. And he's a guy, especially on kind of that short turnaround 1-2 day prep, he's a guy that's proven he can win games in that kind of environment, in that sort of setting. And, Ronnie Terry just hasn't done that yet. And I think, like, as you said, there's just not a lot of examples of teams doing this. I mean, the only one I can really think of is like LSU. A couple of times, I forget what year was it, maybe 2018, 2019, when Will Wade got suspended right before the tournament. And then last year when he got fired on, what was that, the day before Selection Sunday or 2 days before Selection Sunday. It just doesn't happen that often. And both of those, I mean, in the case last year, LSU got knocked out of the tournament in the first round. I think they won a couple of games when Will Wade was suspended. Obviously, very different circumstances to this. but it just doesn't happen where a team competing for second weekend of the tournament, conference title, that sort of thing, loses their coach kind of not suddenly. I mean, Beard's been sidelined for a month, but loses him, kind of has that. No, I know. And is this going to be a distraction, or is this going to be kind of freeing for the players? Is this going to be kind of not hanging over their heads anymore? I don't know. It's, we kind of wait and see, and the Big 12's a gauntlet, so they might have lost games either way, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how they respond to this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously, it was, to me, the biggest storyline in college basketball, and now it gets even bigger with what happened. I mean, you brought up some good examples. Bo Ryan left Wisconsin mid-season. That team wasn't as good. They come off the Final Four runs, but there just aren't a lot of teams that have experienced this. I think what makes Chris Beard unique, and sometimes it's weird to talk about this, because it's like we're talking about a guy who was hit with a felony domestic violence case, and that's the priority, right? Like, that's the most important thing in this whole conversation. But our job, in part, is to talk about college basketball and the team and its impact, right? Chris Beard, in a transfer portal era, I talked to Tyrese Hunter. He went to Texas. Sure, the NIL was important, but he had NIL offers everywhere. Like, Tyrese Hunter was going to get paid no matter where he went. That dude went to Texas because of Chris Beard. Marcus Carr left Minnesota and went to Texas because of Chris Beard. Like, these guys, all these transfers who are assembled in Austin, it was Chris Beard, not just the school or the NIL. And I think you lose that element.
We also, I mean, and I know this is more, and we'll probably get to the future of Texas and Ronnie Terry in a little bit, but like, he also has 2 top 25 recruits signed, or one's committed, one's signed, Ron Holland.
What happens there?
And AJ Johnson. I mean, if Rodney Terry stays on, do they stay on? If they have a coaching change, do those guys open up their options? It's just, there's a lot of moving parts now. And again, this is a team that could, talent-wise, on paper, make a deep run in the Final Four. And if they do that, do they just keep Rodney Terry and they keep the recruits and they keep the team together? And it's just, there's a lot to play out over the next 2 months. But it's Texas. It's one of the top, 12 jobs in the country, top 12, top 15 jobs in the country. I mean, this is a job that the biggest names in the sport are going to be interested in.
You and I both know some coaches of some pretty good teams right now have called their agents today and said, see what you hear, see what you find out. The language from the University of Texas today, it didn't say Rodney Terry can't be the head coach, but it didn't say anything about setting him up to have that opportunity. Like, it felt to me what they were saying was Rodney Terry, and this was the language, will be the head coach through the remainder of the season. There are no guarantees, which to me feels like a school that wants to move past the entire Chris Beard era. If that happens, Jeff, who are the calls? What are the calls they're going to make in college basketball for what you said is one of the premier jobs in this sport?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they can call, the cream of the. I mean, they should call John Calipari, and that sounds crazy.
Oh, yeah, it does sound crazy.
And you've reported on this. I mean, he's not under pressure of getting fired. They owe him like $46 million or something like that if they fire him. They're not firing him, but he's as the pressure there is as kind of heavy as it's ever been since he got there. I mean, they won 9 games a couple of years ago. They lose to St. Peter's last year in the tournament. They're not looking great this year. I mean, there's a segment of the fan base every year that wants whatever coach is there out, but the noise from a larger segment of that fan base than usual is kind of is fed up with Calipari. So if you're Texas, why not call him and say, hey, come here, we'll pay you X amount of money. You don't have to deal with the Kentucky fan base, and you can start fresh. If I'm Cal, I don't know if I'm walking away from that kind of money that Kentucky has, and it's still the best, maybe the best job in the sport, but it's worth a call. Scott Drew is worth a call. I don't know if he takes it, but Texas is a better job than Baylor. Maybe he feels he's maxed out at Baylor. I don't know. It's worth a phone call. I don't think he takes it. I think he's happy at Baylor. I think it fits him. I think he's built it up, almost single-handedly, and I don't think he would take it. But you have to call him. You have to call Kelvin Sampson. Another elite coach in the same state. Again, that's another one. Does he take it? His son is on staff with him at Houston. Might be the next coach at Houston. That's another one that he's turned around, done an incredible job. Houston is going to the Big 12. The family seems pretty comfortable at Houston, but these are guys you have to call, make them say no to you. I mean, you can offer more money than, I don't know, 99.9% of jobs in the country. You have a new facility.
Beautiful arena. That arena is beautiful.
Incredible. Yes. Incredible arena. I mean, it's Austin, Texas, a great location. The pressure is a little bit, it's a football school, but they ran Rick Barnes out of town. They ran Shaka Smart out of town. These are, if Shaka doesn't take Marquette, does he get fired after getting a 3 seed in the tournament? Maybe. I mean, Barnes made the tournament every year, and he left for Tennessee. I mean, it's just, there is a decent amount of pressure there, and so that's like a guy like Nate Oates. He's another guy they probably call. He's on their list, but Alabama. I mean, in an NIL age where Texas is going to the SEC, that might be the same job as Texas with less pressure. So there are some negatives to the Texas job, but again, this is a job that I think you call Cal, you call Scott Drew, you call Kelvin Sampson, you make them say no, and then you move on to a Nate Oates and Eric Musselman, somebody like that. But I don't think they're going to swing and miss on too many guys. This is an elite job with a lot of resources, a ton of money. They could pay whatever, and I think they're going to go get a heavy hitter.
It's a fascinating list that you mentioned because college football is dealing with this. Like there was an era in college football where 4 or 5 schools called you, you left.
Yep.
But now there's so much money that guys stay. So now
10 years ago, if you call the coach at Houston or Alabama, they're walking to Texas. And now Nate Oates can say, well, I mean, you're coming to our league. We have as much money as you. Am I leaving? Yeah. Maybe not. But again, I mean, I think they're going to call these guys, and I don't think they're going to get 5 straight no's. I think they're going to get one of their. I don't know who's at the top of their list. I don't know who's number 4 on their list, but I'd imagine they're getting one of them. I mean, Beard was their top choice 2 years ago when they hired him. They got him. And again, I mean, they're going to take some swings, and I'm assuming they're going to call the right people. If they call Jay Wright as their first call, I think he's going to say no. If they call Matt Painter or Tony Bennett, they're probably going to say no. But realistic guys, I think they're worth a call. The Caliparis, the Drews, the Sampsons, and then we'll see.
It's fascinating with the new era because obviously Scott Drew's making good money. He has a lifetime deal essentially at Baylor. He can stay there as long as he wants. Cal could be interesting. Kelvin Sampson's the one where you're like, man, that's the perfect move if you're Texas. And you would think if you're Kelvin Sampson, hey, man, you have done more with Houston than anyone thought possible. You legitimately restored the name of that program after all the struggles following, the 5 Slamma Jamma. But guess what? Houston's got a billionaire backer who's not just going to let some team come and pluck Kelvin Sampson without a fight. So it's just interesting that
7 years old, coaches, I'm not going to Texas and dealing with the next 3 years. Like I'm going to stay here for a couple of years. Then my son's taking over and we're happy here. So that goes to what you said before about guys just aren't leaving like they used to.
Yeah. It's a fascinating situation. Again, the premier news, the most important news, obviously Chris Beard's been terminated for cause after his felony domestic violence arrest. Again, that is a terrible set of accusations. If you read the police report, it's easy to come away from that and say, wow, something really terrible happened that night. And you can understand Texas saying Chris Beard's unfit to be a head coach if those allegations are true. But now comes the next step for the University of Texas. Chris Beard's gone. What happens next? It feels like a situation we haven't experienced in college basketball. We will find out in the weeks and months ahead. He's Jeff Borzello. I'm Myron Medcalf. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, watching. Tell your friends about us. We're the next big thing. Trust us.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.